I've spent most of my adult life reading the ground, geology, soil dynamics, fault lines. It's a quiet science, the kind most people ignore until the earth starts shifting beneath them. A month ago, the small mountain town of Elridge was evacuated after a report I helped file warned of a potential landslide. Now, with the threat supposedly past, I've been sent back alone to assess the damage and stability of the area. Driving into town in the middle of winter, with nothing but snow and silence around me, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about this trip felt off. Maybe it was the stillness. Maybe it was the fact that no one else volunteered to return. The town looked exactly as I remembered it, only quieter, colder, like it had exhaled and then forgotten how to breathe. Snow had buried most of the sidewalks and porches, softening the sharp edges of buildings and fences until everything looked half-finished. Storefronts sat frozen in time. Barber, diner, post office, their signs dull behind frost-glazed windows, their interiors swallowed by shadow. I parked near the town square and stepped out, my boots sinking deep into snow that had clearly gone untouched for days, maybe weeks. No footprints, no tire tracks, no animal trails, just the wind brushing between buildings like it was searching for something. For a place that once buzzed with chatter, engine noise, and weekend markets, Elridge now felt like a sealed-off diorama, perfectly preserved, eerily still, and completely hollow. I started my survey near the base of the ridge, where the soil had first shown signs of slipping. The snow here was thinner, packed down by the wind, revealing patches of dark earth and splintered grass. I took readings, marked stress points, logged surface cracks into my tablet. But even as I worked, I kept glancing over my shoulder. The town was too quiet. I told myself it was just the isolation getting to me. No cell signal, no radio reception, no voices. But it felt deeper than that. It felt like the silence was watching. At one point, I thought I heard the crunch of footsteps behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just my own boot prints trailing back through the snow. By mid-afternoon, the sky had started to dim, veiled by low-hanging clouds that smeared the sun into a dull white glow. I made my way to the old community center to shelter from the wind and review my notes. The front doors were unlocked, something that struck me as odd, even in a town abandoned in a hurry. Inside, the air was bitter cold, but the building looked untouched. Folding chairs stacked neatly against the walls, a bulletin board still pinned with outdated flyers for bake sales and fire safety meetings. But what caught my attention was a coat, dark green, wool, and unmistakably recent, draped over the back of a chair near the stage. A small dusting of snow had melted into a wet stain on the floor beneath it. Someone had been here, not weeks ago. Hours. I stood completely still, listening. Nothing. Just the faint creak of the rafters above me and the cold creeping deeper into my skin. I moved closer to the coat, half expecting someone to step out from the shadows or from one of the doorways, but the room remained empty. I touched the coat. It was damp, warm to the touch, but not frozen, as if it had been worn recently. Whoever left it hadn't been gone long. The care with which it was draped over the chair struck me as odd, like it had been placed there with intention, like someone meant to return for it. I glanced around the room. No bags, no boots, no sign of a hurried exit. Just that coat, quietly waiting. I called out once, my voice echoing hollowly through the space, but it was swallowed by the walls almost immediately. Then, through the frosted window, I saw them. Fresh footprints in the snow outside, leading toward the back door. And they weren't mine. I felt my breath catch in my throat, the air suddenly colder as my eyes traced the footprints in the snow. They were deep, the edges sharp, like whoever made them had been walking in a hurry. I rushed to the window, trying to make out the path, but the storm had picked up again, obscuring everything beyond the first few steps. Still, something about the direction those prints led me in made my stomach twist. They weren't heading toward the back parking lot or the town. No, they veered off to the woods behind the building. I had a sinking feeling that I wasn't just dealing with someone who'd forgotten to lock up. Someone had been here recently, and now they were out there. Against my better judgment, I stepped outside and followed the trail. The snow was deeper here, clinging to my boots and slowing me down with each step. The wind had started to howl, pushing fine powder across the tracks, but they were still visible, leading straight into the woods. I kept my eyes on the trees ahead, half expecting to see someone dart between the trunks or glance back at me from behind the branches. But there was nothing, just that same hollow quiet. About 50 yards in, the footprints suddenly stopped. No turn, no return path. They just ended, like the person had been lifted off the ground and carried away. I stood there, staring at the final impression in the snow, a single boot print with a sharp heel, and felt the overwhelming certainty that I was no longer alone. I turned in a slow circle, scanning the woods for any sign of movement. The trees stood tall and bare, their skeletal branches rattling softly in the wind, but nothing moved among them. I took a step back, suddenly aware of how far I'd wandered from the town center. The forest pressed in around me, too quiet, too still. Then I noticed something else. A faint depression in the snow a few feet off the trail, as if something had been dragged. It led to a cluster of trees packed tightly together, their trunks dark with age and moisture. I hesitated, every instinct telling me to walk away, but I followed it. Just a few steps in, tucked between the roots, was a pile of belongings. A backpack, a flashlight, a cracked cell phone with the screen still glowing. And beneath them, barely visible beneath a dusting of snow, another boot print. This one was mine. Panic bloomed fast and sharp in my chest. I stumbled back, nearly dropping my tablet, my breath fogging in the air as I tried to make sense of what I was seeing. That boot print, it matched mine exactly. The same worn sole, same angled tread, like it had been copied and placed there. But I hadn't been here before. I would have remembered this clearing, the unearthed belongings, the dread curling like ice in my spine. I spun around, looking for my own trail to retrace my steps. But there was nothing. The footprints I had followed were gone, buried under freshly fallen snow, or maybe they were never really there. The trees now looked unfamiliar, as if the forest had shifted while my back was turned. I checked my compass, then my GPS. Both were dead. I was alone in the woods, and something out here wanted me to know I wasn't the first. I ran. Branches snapped against my jacket, breath tearing out of my lungs in short bursts as I pushed through the deepening snow. I didn't know where I was going, just away from the clearing, away from that print that shouldn't exist. The forest blurred around me, trees blending into a wall of gray and white, but I kept running until I saw it, the outline of a building, half buried in snow. It was the old ranger station near the edge of town. I stumbled toward it, lungs burning, legs shaking, and slammed the door behind me. Inside, it was cold but solid, familiar. I sank to the floor and stayed there, listening. No footsteps followed. No shadows moved outside the frost-covered window. I was safe, for now. But as I looked down at the snow still clinging to my boots, I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Another boot print beside mine. Identical. Perfect. Pressed into the floorboards before I ever stepped inside. Winter always brings a certain silence to the landscape around the research center, an eerie, heavy stillness that feels like the world is holding its breath. I've gotten used to it over the years. The snow-blanketed forest surrounding the facility becomes my only companion, the hum of equipment and my own footsteps the only reminders of life. That morning, I drove to the nearest convenience store as usual, the road slick with ice and the air sharp against the windshield. Inside the store, while collecting my regular supplies, the storekeeper mentioned something strange. Someone had come by earlier asking about the research center. A man, tall and quiet, with no explanation. It was the kind of detail that shouldn't have bothered me, but as I stepped back out into the cold, a strange unease clung to me, like frost that wouldn't melt. The drive back felt longer than usual. The snow had thickened, covering even the most recent tire tracks, including my own. As I approached the facility, my breath caught. There was a car parked in the lot. It wasn't mine, and I hadn't received any notifications about a visitor. No emails, no letters. I double-checked once I got inside, refreshing my inbox, flipping through the mailbox tucked by the door. Nothing. It wasn't entirely unheard of for inspectors or researchers to drop by without warning, but it was rare. Protocol usually kept things orderly. I tried calling the main facility in a different time zone, hoping for some explanation, but the call wouldn't go through. Time differences and remote systems often made communication unpredictable. Still, something about the whole situation felt off. I found myself standing at the window for a long time, watching that unfamiliar car as snow continued to fall over its windshield. Eventually, I forced myself to move. I couldn't waste the entire day on speculation. If it was something official, I would find out soon enough. I gathered my things and stepped outside, deciding to check the grounds. The snow was fresh, soft, and undisturbed. As I walked toward the main entrance, I scanned the area carefully. No footprints. Not a single mark in the snow leading to or from the parked car. The vehicle sat there silently, like it had been dropped from the sky. I circled it once, noting the frosted windows and the way the snow clung to the tires. No signs of anyone exiting or entering. It was as if whoever had driven it here had vanished into thin air. A knot began to form in my chest, but I told myself it was probably nothing. Still, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder as I headed back inside. Inside, the warmth did little to settle the chill that had started to creep beneath my skin. I checked the locks on every door and window, then tried the main facility line again. Still no connection. I told myself it could be a power fluctuation, a satellite issue, maybe even a temporary outage. But none of those possibilities eased the growing tension. I went through my messages once more, checked my schedule, scoured my notes, nothing to suggest a visit. With no answers and nothing else to do, I focused on preparing a simple meal. Routine, I thought, would help. The silence returned, heavy and absolute, broken only by the occasional hum of old pipes or the ticking of the clock above the entrance. I tried to dismiss the lingering sense of wrongness, but it clung to the edges of my thoughts, quietly building. I was stirring a pot on the stove when I heard it. Footsteps, slow and deliberate, crunching faintly against the snow outside. They didn't approach directly. Instead, they moved along the side of the building, pausing every few seconds, as if the person was trying to stay hidden. I turned off the burner without thinking, every sense on high alert. I moved silently toward the back door, listening. The footsteps stopped. I waited, barely breathing. Then, without warning, one of the doors creaked open. It wasn't the front. It was somewhere deeper inside. A door that should have been locked. A door that only someone who knew the layout would think to try. My instincts took over. I didn't wait to see who it was. I bolted through the back door, slamming it shut behind me as I plunged into the snow. The cold hit me like a wave, but I didn't stop. I veered off the cleared path, heading straight into the forest where the trees were dense and the snow was deep. My boots sank with every step, slowing me down, but I knew the terrain better than anyone else. If I could cut through the forest and reach the village, I might be able to find help. Behind me, I heard the sharp, rapid crunch of footsteps following. He was chasing me. Whoever he wasn't hesitating. I didn't look back. I couldn't afford the time. I focused on the slope ahead, a natural bend in the land that curved around toward the trail to the village. If I could make it there, I would have a chance. Just as I reached the bend, my foot caught beneath a root buried under the snow, and I went down hard. The impact knocked the breath from my lungs, and pain shot up my leg. I bit down on my lip, stifling a cry, trying not to make a sound. Every instinct screamed at me to move, but I stayed low, pressed against the snowbank, heart pounding against the frozen ground. A moment later, the man burst past, his dark shape slicing through the white landscape like a shadow. He didn't slow, didn't notice me lying just a few feet away. He kept running, thinking I was still ahead. I waited, watching his form disappear deeper into the woods, the sound of his steps growing fainter until they vanished completely. I waited longer than I thought necessary, forcing myself to stay still until the cold began to seep into my bones. Then I crawled forward, careful not to make any sudden movements, and slowly rose to my feet. My leg throbbed with every step, but I had no choice. I turned away from the main trail and took an alternate path, narrow, less traveled, one I had used during past field studies. The trees pressed closer here, offering some cover. I moved as quickly as I could, breathing shallow, constantly glancing over my shoulder. Every branch, creak, or gust of wind sent a jolt of panic through me, but the forest stayed quiet. Eventually, through the thinning trees, I saw rooftops. The edge of the village was in sight. Relief didn't come until I stepped onto the first paved path leading into the village. My legs trembled as I approached the nearest house, a place I had visited many times before when I needed supplies or brief company. The person who lived there recognized me immediately and helped me inside without question. I explained everything, from the stranger at the store to the car, the footsteps, and the chase through the forest. As I spoke, the shock of it all finally caught up to me. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. We contacted the local police, who responded quickly. They went straight to the research center and found the car still parked exactly where I'd seen it. But no one was inside. No tracks, no signs of forced entry, no clues about who the man was or what he wanted. The police secured the car, but no evidence pointed to anything conclusive. They searched the surrounding area, but the man was nowhere to be found. The whole experience felt unreal, like I had imagined it or maybe been caught in a nightmare. But the emptiness of the research center, the untouched snow, and the car that no one seemed to have used all made it clear that something wasn't right. The man never returned, and I never saw him again. I still don't know who he was or what he wanted, but I'm left with the eerie feeling that he's still out there, watching from the shadows. I've been more cautious since then, locking doors, checking the windows, staying aware of every movement outside. The world feels much smaller now, as if the cold winter silence is waiting for something more to happen.